Ready.
Alrighty. Hey folks, thanks for joining me today. How's it going?
Thanks.
Feeling pretty good.
I'm excited to talk about this astrology with you all because it's a time, right?
It's definitely been a heavy week.
Yeah. So before we get started, most of you are new to the astrology show, or the astrology show, Jesus. So I'm going to introduce you guys or have you guys introduce yourselves. But first, thank you so much to all the 11th housers joining us live. It's always fun to have you guys here. Feel free to chat in the chat, ask any questions you want. We're going to get started. So I guess to start, I should welcome back Patrick Watson to the show. You just joined us a couple episodes ago with Lisa Shine to talk about zodiacal releasing. So thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for inviting me.
Do you want to share your SMR and a little bit about your practice for folks who don't know?
Sure. I am a Libra Sun, Scorpio Moon, and Leo Rising. And I have been practicing astrology for nearly 2 decades. And I primarily do natal astrology, electional, horary, mundane, financial astrology. I have my fingers on a lot of pies. My techniques and background are in tropical techniques, use whole sign houses, traditional rulerships, and many Hellenistic timing techniques. So that's kind of the broad overview of the type of astrology I practice.
And you primarily do like consults too. You don't really do you do a lot of teaching?
I do tutoring sessions. I also do consultations, and I also do rectifications and horaries and electionals for people. I'm also going to be releasing a course in rectification with Brennan.
Oh, cool.
So that's the only teaching I'm currently doing right now, is sort of tutoring a lot of students of Kris's course, basically, and then the course I'm releasing on rectification with Brennan. But who knows, maybe I'll find time to do other things. I also do videos and articles and memes occasionally, so I have a lot on my plate.
I was gonna say definitely check out Patrick's collection of articles, because you have a pretty prolific like blog basically, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not always able to update it, but I do still update it. And I'm trying to get more regular with my content there. So I know I have plans to get back into video soon at some point as well. So I also have some old content on my YouTube, which is now very embarrassing. But you can still find that all on my website at patrickwatsonAstrology.com.
Awesome. Cool. Excited about the rectification course. That's dope. We need more people doing that. So awesome. Yeah. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Kris, welcome to the Astrology Show.
Thank you for having me. This is my first time. What?
No, go ahead. This is your first time here.
This is my first. Yeah, this is my first time here. This is my first time ever recording. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yay! That's awesome. Yeah, I think we first connected during like a year ago, basically during the beginning of quarantine, right? Or 2 years ago. Jesus. It's 2022.
Ooh,
We've been in this for 2 years.
But I got a chance to talk and interact with all of you through Twitter, especially as I was deep diving into Hellenistic astrology. And I'll dive into a little about myself. I am a Scorpio sun, Capricorn moon, Sagittarius rising, and I practice tropical Hellenistic astrology. Mostly I do consults, a little bit of synastry as well, but I'm not super into some of the other things. I'm still working on my electional astrology techniques and getting more into mundane astrology, while also studying, and I recently started this, Jyotish as well. I want to expand my abilities so far.
Awesome. So Sag rising.
Yep. I'm always joyful, even when times aren't exactly the best.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I feel like no, our birthdays aren't that close, right? I always forget when yours is.
November 14th.
Okay, yeah, they are very close. That's right. Yeah, because
Sweet.
our suns are pretty closely
Yep.
aligned. Okay. Cool. I didn't realize we were having so much Scorpio. We all have Scorpio energy here, so that's so exciting. Awesome. And you do consults, you said, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
I also do a little bit of tutoring on the side for people interested in Hellenistic astrology, mostly in my local astrology group.
Cool.
So
And where are you located?
I am from Detroit.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah.
Is there like a nice astro community there?
Well, for the most part, it's a bit scattered, but there are some esoteric groups. Luckily, I moved into a great neighborhood where I was able to meet a bunch of my like fellow astros, tarot readers, a lot of other diviners. And so far, I was the one most advanced in astrology. So I got around to teaching them and helping them understand astrology a bit more, especially during my time over quarantine.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I bet they were like picking your brain. It's always fun when you like enter into other like spiritual groups and people are into astrology, but have no idea that it can go as deep as what we do. And so they become like fascinated.
Man, it's been a great exchange. My former roommate was one of the best tarot readers I've ever had a chance to encounter. And she's the one who actually encouraged me to become a professional astrologer, because a lot of the time I was just sitting on all the knowledge I had. And I realized I was like, oh, I can actually do this, especially after having a few clients and seeing them happy with everything. And then all of my predictions working out. It was just like that. You feel empowered the first couple times you actually do it.
Awesome. Well, happy to have you.
Thank you.
And SJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kirah. Thanks for having me. Really nice to see you.
You
nice
too.
to be with everyone.
Yeah, I also haven't seen you like, face to face, video to video screen since early quarantine. And that's when we first kind of connected too. I think you were in China, right? Or you had just come back from China, like right when COVID hit.
Yeah, I left China right in late January 2020 when they were shutting down Wuhan and then coming to where I was living. And I split to wait it out, so-called, and I never went back.
Wow.
So the fate kind of stepped in, and now I'm living in Albania, which I really love it here. But I remember that party we all had when Saturn ingressed into Aquarius for the first time, and it was sort of some Twitter astrologers. I have nostalgia for that night. It was a fun night.
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. That was really fun. So yeah, why don't you share your SMR if you're comfortable and more about your practice?
You got it. Yeah, my SMR is Aries Sun, Scorpio Moon. So we all have that Scorpio, and Libra rising. So, and my practice, I'm a consulting astrologer. Let's see here. What do I do? Hellenistic inspired, I would say, maybe contemporary astrology. I mainly focus on counseling and just kind of natal counseling, but obviously clients need elections, they need rectifications. If you do any kind of natal consultation, you'll have examples where you have to rectify on the fly. So I do, those once a month. It's just, you have to be able to give a good consultation. Let me see, in terms of my interests, I'm definitely interested in mundane astrology. I've written some articles about that for various publications. I like some financial astrology as well. And I don't know, I like astrological history. I don't know, I'm interested in kind of contemporary cultural, where astrology fits in the culture, and media is a big interest of mine. But, I'm like everybody, it's just, there's so much to learn and so much to engage in. I love social media and how this community that we've had, especially in the last few years, as that's blown up. We've all got to kind of connect with each other all over the world. Let me see. The other thing I do is YouTube. I'm pretty active on YouTube. I have a weekly show, and that's been a really big part of my practice. Just love it. I love, presenting via video, and the way that allows me to get out into the world in front of a lot of people. And Twitter is my first love, I guess, as an astrologer. So that's how I think I know everybody here from Twitter. So
yeah. Love your tweets. I love when you do like really fun mundane threads, or just like kind of call out things that people might not be paying attention to so much, and I always really appreciate that. So yeah, SJs are actually, all of you are really great Twitter follows. If anyone isn't already following all three of you. Yeah, this is a great crew to talk about the forecast, I think, because you all do mundane way more than me. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. And I'm assuming all three of you guys kind of know each other from Twitter as well.
This is my first time meeting Kris and SJ over camera, but I've interacted with them a few times on Twitter. Cool. My first astrology community was back on MySpace, so this is like the third social media experience with astrologers, but I've enjoyed Twitter a lot. It's definitely helped end my Facebook addiction.
Oh, I am using Twitter almost every day. Actually, Patrick, it was your video on whole sign houses that I watched a couple years back that actually convinced me to leave behind Placidus and Modern and take my Hellenistic journey. That's why I've always been a huge fan of yours for years. So it's a genuine pleasure to meet you.
That is such a huge compliment, and you're welcome.
Love that.
Thank you so much. That's really awesome to hear.
We're going to have to link that article down below. Because I need it to I need to kind of link it out to people too. Because whenever people ask me, I'm just like, for me, there was an astrology podcast episode that Kris did in 2015 about whole sign houses being the best house system. And that's what got me to switch. And so I'm always just linking that. And your article will be good too.
Oh yeah, it was a bit snarky if I remember.
As it should be.
But I'm
Scorpio moon.
It's a complicated discussion. I probably hold it a little more maturely now, just knowing the kinds of objections people have to it. But yeah, I guess that is out there for people to link to.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about this astro. We're in Aries season. Where even are we? Okay, so we're recording this on Friday, April 8th. We're in Aries season, and we are coming off the Mars Saturn conjunction at 22 degrees of Aquarius. Hate it here. 2 years ago, we talked about this in the last episode, so we won't talk too much about it, but I'm just curious if you guys have any good examples of, things that happened this week around this conjunction, but and I certainly have one. But yeah, we had this conjunction 2 years ago. I think it was March 31st, 2020, right at the beginning of lockdown at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And yeah, very similar vibe. This time I think it's worse because they're at the bendings. Mars and Saturn are right smack dab square the nodal axis, and I think it's making things weirder. It's also just worse for me personally. My Mars is at 22 Scorpio, so I'm just getting wrecked right now by transits. But yeah, this conjunction, I'm curious if you guys have any cool antidotes, or cool meaning #astrologer good, because I definitely have one, which was on, I forget what Monday, it must have been Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday morning. I only had 4 hours of sleep. I went to bed at 4 a.m. Everything was fine. Woke up at 8 a.m. to a horrible smell. This terrible smell in my apartment. And I was like, what is that? What is that smell? Got up, went to the bathroom, toilet won't flush. I'm not wearing my glasses. I'm like, what's going on? And then, mind you, the moon had just entered my fourth house. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, what does that smell? What does that smell? I look over into my bathtub and it's like, has a bunch of like dirty sewage water in it.
Oh,
I had just
no.
got my apartment cleaned the day before, like less than 24 hours before my apartment was cleaned. And yeah, toilet won't flush, sewer water in my tub, my beautiful clean tub. And so for me, and then yeah, it ended up being like plumbing issue, you know, there was a backup. Which is like so Mars conjunct Saturn, you know, there's a backup, and it was in my 12th house. So it's in a space where I'm like, not really aware of like what's happening. And of course the South Node right smack dab on my Mars as well. So yeah, that was my, amongst other things, which I won't talk about, but that was one of the like, you know, very obvious Mars Saturns. I'm wondering, yeah, do you guys have any stories around that, whether it's personal or mundane?
I have a
do.
personals. Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
No,
if
go
you wanna
ahead.
start
Go
with
ahead.
something.
No, go ahead, Kris.
Chris first.
All right. So, fortunately, being a Sag rising, this Mars Saturn conjunction was all in my Caden third house. Square. My sun is also at 22 degrees Scorpio. So mostly it was just this idea of like, it was being inextricably angry. Like I was at my other job and it just felt like things were not working out at all. The water went out. Like I'm also a prep cook and one of my day jobs alongside being an ESL tutor. And it was just like the water in the building completely cut off. We couldn't do anything. It just felt like everything was starting and stopping. People were consistently coming in and just being angry all the time. And I was just watching the sheer frustration of the people around me. And it was so uncomfortable and weird at the same time. And a bit on the personal side, I had a lot of things that I had been burying like in the back of my mind just come up. Like, you know, those realizations that happen when you're not really thinking about anything. I had a whole lot of things come up about a recent breakup I had, and it just everything started clicking, even when I didn't really want it to. And it was just dealing with, I described that entire time of just like dealing with like rage and grief, like people wanting things and just couldn't, and it not happening for them and within myself as well.
Yeah. that feels spot on. I mean, I said on Twitter, I personally think that this Mars Saturn fixed, I've been calling it malefic madness, but just the fixed stuff happening. I feel like I personally think it's probably worse for mutable risings. Like having it fixed stuff happen in cadent houses is so hard. It's really, really difficult. But we'll see what the cardinal and fixed rising say about that.
Well, I hope I don't make this too heavy, but I'll try to keep the abridged version. Basically, the Mars Saturn conjunction just occurred in my 7th house, very close to my descendant, and I just got back from the hospital about a day ago because my wife had a serious medical issue that came about at the time of the conjunction. So, you know, something to remember when you're looking at a transit that happens in your 7th house is not always like, oh, a malefic's going through my 7th house, that means relationship problems. It's literally your partner. So it can be things that is happening to the partner. So it happened to my wife. And so she's made a recovery. But the slightly larger story that makes it even more impressive in context of the whole Mars Saturn cycle is that the other thing that occurred in the week or so leading up to the conjunction is that both me and my wife decided to try this alternate day fasting plan, which is where you fast for a whole day and then you eat regularly for a day and then you fast the next day and just continue doing that. Well, I can do that because I have some extra meat on me. So like I can afford to do that. And even though I really, really struggled, doing is like, I felt very, very hungry over this Mars Saturn conjunction. I was hangry. Like I was not doing so hot. But for my wife, it was much, much harder on her, and it was too hard on her. And she wasn't really eating enough, even on the days she was supposed to be eating. But the reason why this kind of makes sense in terms of the larger Mars cycle is that at the last Mars Saturn square back in November, I myself had a kind of a medical issue that seemed to have come about from just too much sitting at the computer, too many hours logged, like being jacked in and not really getting enough exercise. That made me kind of worried about like my heart health. And at the Mars Saturn opposition in July of 2020, that was when we had to stop going to the gym because the COVID cases started coming back up again. Because for a brief period in July, when Jupiter had just like dipped its toe into Pisces, it looked like things might be good. So we went back to the gym. And then, of course, March 2020 was when my wife and I stopped going to the gym again because of the beginning of COVID. I forget exactly what happened at the January 2021 initial Mars square, but that's the way it seems to make sense for me and my wife. The fact that the Mars Saturn conjunction was happening in the 7th house, we had to stop, our activities and going to the gym. And then there was curtailed again the next opposition and this other health scare in November. And then finally, starting this alternate day fasting at the Mars Saturn conjunction, not recommended. It's pretty hardcore. So that's just the way Mars and Saturn are. The interesting thing, of course, about this is that my wife was also born with Leo rising. So the same Mars Saturn conjunctions were also happening in her 7th. So it's weird how it's sort of it involved kind of both of us, but it seemed to have hit her harder for whatever reason, even though we were both kind of involved in the events that was related to this conjunction of the malefic. So yeah, that is my story with Mars and Saturn lately. I haven't even been able to really keep track of the news because I've just, I've been just recovering from the past day of being in the hospital.
Oh, I'm glad she's recovering, and I hope she continues to. That's always scary. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yeah. But thanks for walking us through that whole timeline, though, because it does make sense that, you stopped being able to go to the gym 2 years ago at this conjunction, and all the subsequent squares, oppositions kind of, told the story.
Yeah.
Damn.
Right.
Okay.
SJ.
Fixed wins over mutable so far.
Lighten this up, SJ.
All right, I got a lighten one actually, and it actually dovetails nicely. I hope your wife recovers very soon, Patrick. But this one's lighter. This one's a little lighter, but it does have to do with other people because my 5th house is where Mars and Saturn conjoined, and I live where there's a lot of children in Albania. It's a very young country, but these kids are playing all the time around me in my apartment. They don't ever talk to me, save for one time they threw an egg at my window when I first moved in, and I had to clean it up, and then we had this whole thing before. They've never done anything like that again. But I'm walking home and they start speaking to me in Albanian, and so I look up, and I didn't think they were talking to me initially, but they were. I walk over, and this little boy and this little girl, and I think about it as Mars and then Saturn as maybe feminine. If you think about that, and they were struggling with the bike. They needed my help to undo the bike, just something on the bike, because they weren't strong enough. So I did it for them. And then the little girl, was a cool image. She had dirty hands. They were having fun and playing, and she was like twisting it back, and she got it back, and then she closed it back herself. But that was a cool example of like their struggle, their Mars Saturn struggle. I kind of play the role of both Mars and Saturn in that moment, which was fun. The other one I'll say is, and there's a lot more. I have the moon at 23, Scorpio. So I've been calling it max pain, Kirah. That's been my code for people. And max pain, it's now dissipating, but it returns. We should remind everybody in August, there's a return of this. So get ready for that. The one other thing I just wanted to mention was that this story out of China, because Mars, Saturn conjoining in Aquarius, of course, coincides with lockdowns in 2020. But we had the return of lockdowns. It wasn't in the Western world and as widely publicized, but in China, there was some massive lockdowns in Shanghai, one of the largest cities in China. And there was this story that came out about the drone that was appearing to residents as they were singing. And the drone, this is a translation from a blue check on Twitter, a journalist, so I'm trusting it, but please comply with COVID restrictions, control your soul's desire for freedom, do not open the window or sing. And I thought that was really cool because in the context of the Mars Saturn conjunction, we have Jupiter and Venus now together, and this happened they happen right simultaneous. And so I really like the Venus Jupiter story of being kind of a soul's desire for freedom, maybe, but concomitant with the Mars Saturn, there's this kind of dual track thing happening right now. And so anyhow, that was one mundane thing that appeared on my radar that was like, okay, this is pretty perfect for a Mars Saturn conjunction, especially in the recent historical context. And I have a bunch of stuff I won't talk about either.
Yeah, no.
Save the audience.
Good point though about, Saturn will come back to 22 2 more times.
Well, Mars will be in Taurus with the node somewhat close, like these three major points all come back. That's the
with Uranus, yeah. And the South Node kind of hangs out at 22. The nodes kind of hang out at 22 until like July too. So we're kind of locked here for a little bit. The one kind of saving grace we have right now is that, those of us with planets, especially those of us with planets at 22 Scorpio, 23 Scorpio, it's like we're getting crushed right now by the malefics and the nodes, but Jupiter is also right there, kind of sending some love too. Jupiter right now is at 23, trying that point. So for me, it's been this like very intense battle between Saturn and Jupiter, to like Saturn being like, all hope is lost, like you're doomed. And then Jupiter being like, you must retain faith. Like there's so much to be, thankful for, And so I'm trying to stick with Jupiter here. But yeah, it's been an interesting kind of, it's trying to like balance the benefic blessings with the malefic madness, especially because they don't interact with each other. So yeah, interesting times we have. And of course, Venus is in Pisces now. So yeah, that was actually, I woke up the minute that Venus entered Pisces to that like sewage issue. So I was like, really Venus, really? But she helped smooth it out quickly, at least. So yeah, let's talk about some of this upcoming astro. I don't really want to talk about Mercury sextile Mars because I just don't like talking about sextiles that much with fast moving planets. But on Sunday, April 10th, we have Mercury squaring Pluto and then peacing out, entering Taurus. Any thoughts about Mercury square Pluto? I think Pluto's at like 28 Capricorn. So Mercury meeting Pluto in that square at 28 Aries before, I think like 12 hours later, hopping into Taurus. Any thoughts on Mercury square Pluto?
I've been thinking a few things about that, mostly looking at markets and just the heavy inflation that's been going on in the US. I feel like more things are going to, as Pluto tends to pull almost all the dark things out of any planet that it interacts with. I'm definitely seeing more stock market. I wouldn't say necessarily manipulation, but the consequences of artificial inflating of the market and more devaluing of the US dollar.
That's a good point.
Yeah. One of the things I actually talked about this recently on the February forecast with the Astrology Podcast. Basically, what I've noticed with these major angular separations between Mercury and Pluto is there tend to be stories in the news about profound disclosures or leaks of things that were known about only in private. And the announcement of things that are potentially sort of incendiary or otherwise sort of controversial. And it also features times when people switch sides or people cross certain barriers in their declaration of a kind of a temporary union with their opponents. So you sometimes see this in a political context where you have people from one party maybe voting for an initiative which is supported by another one, because Mercury is kind of that ambiguous turncoat. So when it's in a tense aspect with Pluto, then it kind of does that to a sort of extreme degree. One of the things that I'm sort of connecting that upcoming square between Mercury and Pluto with is the French election, which takes place, the first round of which takes place on April 10th. And the current French president, Emmanuel Macron, has Pluto currently transiting exactly in the degree of his ascendant. So when Mercury makes that square, as people are casting their votes, I think this will reflect the voting public of France in kind of declaring their support for him, which is interesting because his support kind of cuts across the left and the right in France. It's a very weird coalition of people who support him, and so you also may see some strategic voting in that day, because in France they have like two rounds of voting, which are basically voting for the top two, and then those top two have like a second round where they run off against each other a few weeks later. So that's one of the things I'm kind of anticipating with that Mercury Pluto square, is the French public kind of crossing lines and kind of strategically voting to give Macron the validation to go into the next round of voting. One small thing I wanted to add about Mercury sextile Saturn, even though you didn't want to talk about it, is just that I thought it was very interesting very recently on Twitter that there's been this meme about, post your cancelable take. And that happened as Mercury itself was separating from Saturn and applying that sextile to Mars. So they were Mercury's enclosed by the malefics. And so people are kind of, posting these like bad takes on purpose. So anyway, that's what I'd have to say on a more like mundane level about Mercury, Pluto and stuff.
Cool. Thanks for putting that on our radar in regards to the election. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't know. Wow, it's on his ascendant. That's wild.
Yeah, I just recently published an article with my prediction for the French presidential election. So we'll have to see if I'm right. But I think the current French president, I think, will be reelected to a second term.
Cool. Any thoughts, SJ, on the Mercury square or Mercury and Taurus?
Sure, I've got a few thoughts on Mercury and Taurus. Mercury square Pluto, a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. I do want to just say this inflation story, watch for it when Mercury comes into Taurus, because on the 12th, there will be the release of CPI numbers in America that should be record-breaking highs, because the last release of that data was 8% year-over-year inflation, which was like a 40-year record or something, but it didn't include all of the gas increases that happened after the Ukrainian conflict, emerges. And so I think that we could see headlines early next week about inflation that are going to return. And of course, with Mercury in Taurus, co-present with that Uranus, we're getting the kind of shocks that can come with the Uranus and Taurus story. That's of course a lot longer than just one Mercury transit, but that's on my radar. And I think the second thing, as Mercury was applying to Pluto, just to follow up with what you were sharing, Patrick, I'm seeing stories today about Mitt Romney. He was clapping, and all of the other Republicans in the Senate left when they confirmed Justice Jackson. And so there was a sort of, if you want to call that turncoat, at least from maybe a Republican perspective, I was resonating with that as you shared there, Patrick. The only other thing I'd say about Mercury sextile Mars is that I feel like this is an important moment because of how strong Aries is activated this year. I mean, we're really, and really next year, and if you want to extend it out with the North Node and then Saturn and Aries, I mean, Aries in our charts is really going to be a big story, I think, for the next few years. And we have Mercury received by its ruler Mars at this exact moment. It's separating, I think, as of the recording of this, but it might be a good time to do some planning. I like Mercury Mars combinations for just planning and thinking about this 6 weeks this summer where it's Jupiter and Mars, the only time they'll be together in Aries for all of Jupiter's time in Aries, which is kind of a special opportunity. But so with Mercury there now, maybe there's a little bit of last minute planning we can do this weekend before it ingresses into Taurus, thinking about all of that Aries energy.
That's a really great point. Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of explain that a little further, we have the reason that we have so much Aries happening. I'm going to ignore Chiron because I just choose to exist. It's not on top of my moon right now. But we have Jupiter moving into Aries May 10th, and then Mars gets there at the end of May. At the end of May. And then, they'll be together for 6 weeks. Jupiter will be there until the end of October, coming back in December to, take a full transit through Aries. And then after that, we will get the nodes also switching into Aries Libra. There is a lot happening there. Ooh, that's cool to kind of think, long-term in that way. Okay, cool. You guys convinced me that maybe I should pay attention to the fast moving sextiles. But yeah, I mean, Mercury and Taurus, maybe I shouldn't say I'm excited about it, but I think it's an interesting transit. We're going to get a really cute sextile between Mercury and Venus, while Venus is in Pisces and Mercury is in Taurus. That happens Sunday, the 17th of April. And of course, Mercury will also run into a sextile with Jupiter and Neptune as well. So, and that one, I guess, is a little bit, I guess it's not extended, because by the time Mercury comes back into Taurus, Jupiter will be gone. We just get that one time. But yeah, okay. So also, just so everyone kind of has it in their head, Mercury will retrograde back into Taurus. It's going to enter Gemini the day of that eclipse on the 30th, and then stop at 4 degrees, come back. I don't know what it comes back to, like 26 degrees or something. I think it's 26. Yeah. Because it comes back into a square with Saturn, which is annoying. But I guess what else did I want to talk about after that? Oh, of course, Jupiter Neptune conjunction that we have happening this weekend. It perfects on Tuesday, the 12th of April. But yeah, it's kind of on right now. They're at 23 degrees together. This one I've been looking forward to / really nervous about, mostly nervous about, and I've seen it kind of playing out even just on Twitter, but they're the delusions, just like the massive amounts of like delusional shit that that comes about with when Neptune transit, especially when planets run into Neptune. And even like something I've witnessed recently is like people like, I don't even know how to explain it, but just people kind of distorting and projecting and being delusional about things that I'm just like, wow, okay, planets are square the nodes, Jupiter is conjunct Neptune. What are y'all talking about? And I particularly was kind of worried about cults, and the rise of, cults in the zeitgeist, which I think is happening already, but it's a weird, it's a weird time for cults because it's like the internet exists and there's these weird like TikTok cults, and these like, more internet type cults. There's one that I was looking into that's like a dance cult. And it's like this weird, like, I guess they're Christian or some type of religious, spiritual, thing. But the members are all have these like really big TikTok accounts, and they all are dancers, and they like dance and they like spread the word by doing these intense TikTok dances. And people are like trying to, my sister's in this cult, like trying to get her out. it's wild. And to me, that is just so like Jupiter, Neptune in Pisces, like a dance cult, like a dance Christian TikTok cult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about you guys' thoughts about this Jupiter Neptune conjunction.
As a fellow Jupiterian rising, I've mostly been afraid of being deluded myself. My personal experience, it's come up with just like, you know how you jokingly hear about people seeing angel numbers all the time, or the same repeating numbers over and over again. People that thinking that they're having meetings. It's like I've been seeing them nonstop. But the one thing I've seen on a mundane level that's been kind of annoying and funny is, have you seen those channel messages for zodiac signs all up and down Twitter, and they won't go away?
Yes. Yes.
It's just like almost every single time I open up Twitter, it's like, hey, this is an important message, XYZ, and just seeing that over and over, and just people falling for it over and over and over again. And a lot of the messages feel targeted, giving a false kind of hope, like, oh, your ex is going to come back, or you're going to get money if you just, if you see these numbers and stuff like that over and over again. And that pivoting back off saying like cults and stuff is just, I've seen more and more people deep dive into, I don't want to call it, I never want to say that somebody's spirituality is kind of fake, but it just feels like there's something off about it. That like the message is correct, like the Jupiterian, like the message is there, but with Neptune there, it just feels like it's getting blurred and people are misunderstanding, especially what astrology is about, their connection to the planets and so on and so forth. There's just like, it's a little bit weird, but beyond that, it's just been, that moment where like, am I seeing signs of something, or am I just going crazy? And that's kind of been my experience.
The angel numbers have been loud for me too, in a sense that like I usually, like I'm not saying I subscribe, but I do pay attention. I've always kind of been into numerology, but like, I don't remember a time since like, before the last 2 weeks where I was looking at 1111 every, both 1111s every day for like the past like 2 weeks. I'm like, why is this happening? It does feel very like Jupiter, Neptune, like the angels are everywhere.
These weird sort of spiritual experience. I've been seeing 333 and 444 all the time, and it's been, kind of freaky for me.
More than usual, yeah, yes. For sure. Yeah.
How many more documentaries can Netflix release about swindlers and frauds and cons?
Exactly.
From the Tinder swindler to the vegan one. I can't even keep track. There's just so many. There's just so much, talk about, things being in the zeitgeist. That there's definitely this, this moment of almost celebrating, not necessarily positively, but, Jupiter in some ways, like sort of celebrating the swindler, the con, the fraud, and, or at least expanding, awareness of it and interest in it. And so I think that's really fascinating. Also, when you look at Jupiter Neptune cyclically, you can see that it has this connection to these, large developments in film. And so, like, for example, the last Jupiter Neptune conjunction was when Avatar came out, the highest grossing film ever made, this immersive experience. And the Avatar 2 sequel is being released this year, when Jupiter and Neptune are close together again in Pisces towards the end of the year. And it's even happening in the sign of Pisces, and it's set underwater. So one of the other things that happened in 2009 in the last Jupiter Neptune conjunction that I thought was very interesting is that was when Disney bought Marvel, and both Stan Lee and the Disney Corporation were formed under the same Jupiter Neptune square from back in the mid-20s. So there's this whole like Jupiter Neptune theme with like Disney and Marvel and Star Wars. It all basically are, big media, big Hollywood corporations and initiatives that I think would potentially reflect in this current moment, this current Jupiter Neptune conjunction potentially being a time of another big acquisition. by one of these companies or other sort of changes in media that might arise this time based on knowing about this cycle. And it's also very interesting knowing that for Marvel that they're releasing this Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, dealing with multiple universes, multiple timelines, different variations. It kind of gives you this idea of like, oh, like, Neptune and Pisces, it keeps showing us the potential of alternate worlds and alternate realities through the medium of TV. And we even saw that with TV shows like Loki, or even shows that came out like Stranger Things, the upside down versus the real world.
Russian dolls coming back soon too.
Oh yeah. So like this is definitely, I think this will be looked back upon probably as a kind of a high pop culture moment. And they maybe even other things that come to consciousness that I couldn't even anticipate. But that's what I kind of see for like Jupiter Neptune in terms of like media, Hollywood, entertainment industry type stuff. On the other hand, I think many people have already pointed this out already. Maybe SJ can speak more about this, about the fact that the last time Jupiter was conjunct Neptune, Russia took an L. Would you like to speak more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's what I was thinking about. One of the number one things I've been talking about it a lot. And Nick Dagan best tweeted this out, and it's kind of been on my radar since he put that front and center. But the Crimean War, there was this peace treaty in 1856, right when they were separating, but it was negotiated, I think, over a period of a month when they actually perfected. And so I'm not up enough on the history of it to know exactly like the context is that Russia took a loss. I've been focused more on there's a agreement around literally Crimea, this area of the world where there's currently a conflict. And I've been holding out optimism, knowing that this phase of this conflict maybe comes to an end here for a while. Now that's a whole nother story about what like the omens for warfare over the next 5 to 10 years, because there's a lot of them. I would say when Jupiter comes back into Pisces, that's something that's really on my radar at the end of the year for things maybe falling apart or a return to this kind of Cold War posturing, because Jupiter in Pisces, Saturn in Aquarius is the Cuban Missile Crisis marker if you just look at the Jupiter Saturn cycle. But yeah, this is the one thing that was on my radar for sure. The other thing I wanted to point out was Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman's book, first published in 1885, but then published again in 1855 first, and then 1856. He edited the rest of his life, but it emerges even the first time with Jupiter in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces. And so I just think that the poetic, I mean, I know how are we dealing with, like, for me, this is all about the recent history of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the pileups in Capricorn in March 2020, the Jupiter-Saturn co-present cycle, and how tough that was on everybody. I mean, that was such a tear in the kind of fabric of our comfort zone collectively. And so this is happening as we're now kind of coming out of it. And I think we're grappling with things like, who are we as humans? I mean, especially if we're in lockdown and now we're reemergent, and it's kind of scary and weird and strange to be in 21st century, second decade of the century. And, I was thinking the other thing about the metaverse as a technology, as a media technology, that really does come to the radar fully those 3 months that Jupiter was in Pisces with Neptune last year. And then, of course, it's now powering through with metaverse and blockchain and all of the stuff that's going to eventually be is emergent. And so, on the one hand, there's some optimism of like stepping into the unknown. I know it's scary. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm trying to personally do this of like, this is some cool stuff we're going to get to have access to in the age of Aquarius. So that's controversial in this age of an Aquarius, Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius, and in the age of air of Saturn and Jupiter conjoining in air signs. So that's kind of the optimistic side. We might have to dissipate a little bit from the former sense of what we thought we were, and that's exciting, but scary and terrifying, So those are a few thoughts that I have. Grief was the other thing that has been a big theme for this. It's been on my radar, even like last year when I was writing about it, because of the sadness of COVID and the losses and everything we've gone through. It's really there's a grief moment here. I think that maybe we can feel into that a little bit this week. And And then it climaxes, of course, with the eclipse really jamming that signature in with an imprint. Even though it's separating, it's still there in that eclipse moment. So I think we're building to that eclipse, really. But
that's a really great point. Yeah, especially about grief too. I think that's definitely been a theme. And it makes me think about how in just a year we have Saturn moving into Pisces, and I kind of think of that also as a pretty big grief signature as well. That Saturn and Pisces millennial generation, they feel like they're always grieving something. And that's not shade. I just that subgroup is so deeply feeling. And a lot of them have, Scorpio placements too, that kind of feed into that. But yeah, I'm just thinking about how, we're in this Pisces season now, and how next year we'll have Saturn there too. And what that might be like. But yeah, I think, one other thing I'll just add to this is that, just there's the grief side and there's the faith side. And I think that with this, Jupiter, Neptune, also Venus being there, it's just like Pisces. It's Pisces land right now in Pisces. Like it's the most Pisces it's going to be, right? With both benefics there, with Neptune. So it is very magical. It's very, I think, spiritual. I think that I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people taking drugs this weekend and tapping into that very, it's a psychedelic signature, So whether you're taking drugs or not, I'm sure you're going to feel it one way or another. Just kind of like, shape shifting, world shifting sort of energy. And it's also really wet. It's also just really sticky. I think syrupy, in a good way. Sweet. Yeah, syrupy. Yeah. Honey. Makes me think of like, the nectar of the gods. And I just think it's really important to, especially with the malefic madness, to like lean into that, because we need to take the edge off a little bit, I think. Whew.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighties. Another planet that's coming to join the Pisces party. I've been calling it like Jove's hot tub. So Mars enters Pisces. Thank God. I'm sorry. I hate Mars at Aquarius so much, just personally, not like the placement itself, but I'm so sick of it. And especially because Saturn's there, but it's just such a like not good place for Mars. I think it like dignity wise, I'm just like, get your ass into the hot tub.
Oh no, I feel that having Mars in my third house is, and just the sheer amount of aggression from Aries season. I've been cussed out over just regular things. I got cussed out on my way to getting lunch from a little local restaurant. So some lady was upset that me and my friend parked too close to her car, and it was just all of a sudden just her honking and just cussing us out for like 10 minutes. I had enough time to go and get my order, come back, and she was still cussing us out.
That is so Mars Saturn in the third. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and on the 14th, Thursday, April 14th, Mars is going to enter Pisces. Dignity switch, Mars has dignity in Pisces, being a nocturnal planet, and Pisces being a water sign, a nocturnal sign. Mars has triplicity there. And also there's decanic rulership, I think, on the last decan. The third decan.
Yeah. And it has this largest set of bounds in Pisces. In fact, it's really kind of a curiously overpowered place in some ways for Mars.
I always think about Austin Coppock and his sun Mars in Pisces, and how he always talks about, he does like martial arts and he kicks. He always talks about kicking. With Mars
he's obsessed
and
with UFC, right? He's always talking about wrestling and stuff.
Yeah. So let's talk about Mars and Pisces a little bit, because I think this is something I often see online where people think that they have a debilitated Mars because it's in Pisces for some reason. Or, you know, they think that's like a bad place for Mars. And I'm like, this is a great place for Mars. Mars does well in water signs. So yeah, SJ, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, just right away, speaking about Jupiter and Mars, mixing there together, because they're on a special team of the water sign, fire sign team. It's a way to divide the planets, but basically Jupiter, the luminaries, and Mars rule by domicile water signs and fire signs. And so there's this kind of special relationship, I think, with Jupiter and Mars that they can join and do some cool things. One, and two, they're preparing together to get very active in that 6 weeks this summer. And so I really like this as kind of the simmering, the cleansing, you know, the ritual bath even before it's go time, in terms of like the final like evening, let's say, with your comrades, or maybe that's a bad word, but just the team that you're going to go out and undertake an adventure with. You get some settling together, the final party, the final cleanse. The other thing I'll say is, this is how I've been thinking about it recently, because you'll have Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Neptune. If we want to just go ahead and say Neptune is a domicile ruler, modern, but it's part of this current symbolism that we have in astrology. You'll have the four rulers, right? The four main rulers: Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, and Mars, using those triplicity rulers. And I've been thinking, you guys seen Peaky Blinders? This is a recent show on the BBC. If you haven't seen that, you can think about The Godfather. But there's these idea of the family meeting. The family convenes, right, to decide the affairs of their family, their house. And so I think this is really a generational opportunity for the Pisces sector of our charts, just on this one hand, to make some decisions around those house topics. You know, like for me, it's sixth house. I've been doing a lot of fasting, not this version, Patrick. I've just been doing that one meal a day fasting. I really love it. Or like just a few hours pocket where I eat, and that's all in my sixth house. And it's been part of my story. But I think with them four together, I'm viewing it as kind of a power move, decisions being made by the family of rulers, is one way to look at it. But yeah, those are a few thoughts.
That's really cool. I haven't thought about it that way, but I love that, like a family meeting. I'm thinking, I keep picturing a steam room, or like going to, you know, the spa or something, and all kind of
sauna, or like,
yeah, the sauna, exactly. And like kind of convening together there. But wow, yeah, that's a really great point. It's making me think about a lot of things.
I'll say it's very literal in my case, since Pisces is my full fourth house, and a lot of me deciding whether or not I'm going to stay in my home city or move someplace else, I think would be a little bit better for me career-wise.
It's happening in my 8th house, so you know, I'm picking out my casket. No, just kidding.
I was gonna say, are you redoing your will?
No, I was struck though by the way you described that as a family meeting, SJ, because one thing that's happening with me right now is I have some really huge decisions to make about a windfall that I've come into through selling my house. And we're trying to decide right now whether or not to put all the money we got into the new house, or whether we should only put a certain amount down in the mortgage so we could have some liquid. And this is probably the only kind of windfall I'll ever have in my whole life. So you know, this is kind of a pretty big decision about, like, you know, how much is going to remain liquid, how much is going to be tied up with a house. And I acknowledge my privilege, and even being a homeowner to begin with, it was a very unlikely,
especially as a millennial,
process, right? It was a very unlikely thing, but I kind of walked into it. It was mainly my wife who did all like the hard work of it, but the fact that it's in my 8th house and it has to do with shared resources, this is a time where we really are kind of under the gun now to find a house, to settle on one, and to decide how much of the money is going to remain liquid, and then how much could be invested, or just in its general savings, or how much would be tied up in a property. So that's you know, I guess benefic problems.
Love
like
that though.
Benefic.
For me, it's my first, and I guess it is pretty apt because I I predicted that with this eclipse or this nodal cycle that I would be shifting some things in terms of my astrology practice, because I came to astrology. I saw my birth chart for the first time during this eclipse cycle. And yeah, the North Node was exactly on my sun the first time I saw my birth chart. And so I was anticipating that, and I'm still in that space of like, what's next, and especially because Jupiter also rules my 10th house. And my Mercury is up. My Mercury is activated right now by perfection on my midheaven. So there's a lot of like, who am I and what am I doing next sort of vibe happening for me right now. And yeah, I'm not gonna say anything now just because I really truly don't know what I'll be doing. But I'm starting to get some ideas and some inklings around like, yeah, what's next? What's after astrology? Not to say that I'm like for sure leaving astrology, but I don't know. I don't know what's coming next. It's interesting to think about. So yeah, first house stuff is weird. I think, especially for me, I have nothing in my first house, and my chart ruler is in detriment in the 7th. And so when things come to my first, I'm just like, I have to focus on myself. Like what's identity? I don't know. I only know who I am when I'm with you. You know what I mean? So yeah,
I feel that on a painful level. I also have my Jupiter in detriment in the 7th retrograde. So it's like, I kind of do need people to bounce off of to figure out who I am, what I'm doing. Though I do have Uranus conjunct my ascendant, so sometimes I just pop off and do.
Oh, you Uranus risings. But yeah, I'm excited for Mars in Pisces. I mean, the last time Mars was in Pisces, I had and it crossed my ascendant. It was the same exact day as my exact Saturn return. So I had this like intense malefic day, and it was 2020, Norwalk 2020. I had this really intense like nerve reaction where my entire like nervous, like it felt like my entire nervous system was inflamed. It was very painful and weird. And it felt very like Mars on my ascendant. So I'm hoping nothing like that happens this time. But regardless, I'm still excited for Mars to just like gain some dignity. So Mars in Pisces, and then after that we get Mars in Aries, and then after that we don't get a dignified Mars for like a really long time. So I'm really holding on to these next 2 Mars transits for sure.
Can I just say one more
sure,
thing here about it? I just want to point out, I mean, Mars and Jupiter, just to give the listeners an idea, they're applying for this whole Mars and Pisces transit, and they're getting closer and closer. And then they move and conjoin in Aries. And so just keep that in mind. It's like the ruler of Pisces, Jupiter, Mars, is kind of not quite getting to it until it's Mars's sign later when they meet. And that's why I think there's a little bit of an anticipatory feeling for this. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is about eclipse season that's coming up. This might not be within the purview of this show, but it really is a marker, this eclipse season, because in between the eclipses, Jupiter comes into Aries. And it's almost like we're going to get spit out into this really more active period. And so what I'm trying to say is like this Mars and Pisces does to me feels like something to lean into and like and enjoy the hot tub. I really like that analogy, because things are going to change significantly pretty soon. And just
don't test the water. Just don't focus too much on what's in the filter of that hot tub. It might be like Kirah's bathtub.
Honestly, yeah.
Personally, I'm just looking forward to a lot more fun since Aries is my fifth house. I'm just
hell yeah.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to some fire too.
Especially after all the COVID restrictions, all the crazy pain and grief. It will be nice to have a lot more fun in life. I'm
hoping. I'm really looking forward to all the Aries stuff for sure. Same. Let's see, what else do we have to talk about? Oh, we have a full moon coming up on the 16th, Libra full moon. Yeah, Libra full moon. I mean, what do we have? This one's not very contested, I guess, huh? I'm about to pull up the chart. But yeah, thoughts on the Libra full moon as I pull it up?
I think this is the Easter one, right? This is the one that defines when Easter happens.
Oh, okay.
So I always think about that particular, because it's always the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, you always get that kind of symbolism of
Yeah, 26 degrees of okay, so it is square Pluto. We're not fully out of out of it, but we do have a square to Pluto. But besides that, yeah, the malefics aren't really besides Mars obviously ruling the sun, the malefics aren't really involved. Yeah, thoughts on this full moon? It takes place Saturday the 16th of April at 26 degrees 45 minutes of Libra. Like, what is there to say? Yeah,
I'm ready to jump in. But
go ahead.
Jump in. We love an Aries ready to jump in.
Sorry, I'll jump right in because I've been thinking about this one. This is so Venus is in Pisces. Just to say it, Venus rules the moon, and while Venus is averse to Libra, I do think there's something about a Pisces Venus Libra full moon that is just enjoyable on its face. The second thing that I was thinking about was this trine to Saturn. The only planet that makes an aspect of the traditionals is Saturn, and this trine from Aquarius. And I've been trying to not get lost in the excitement of now things moving out from Saturn ruled signs, but just really, I think this will be a good opportunity to contextualize Saturn's run. It starts in December 2017. It's very, very powerful. And, now we're still kind of under Saturn's domain here. And the reality, lockdowns are still happening in the world. We still have these kind of upheavals of geopolitical reformation and all of these things that are still on our plate. I don't mean to be a party pooper, is that the term, or a buzzkill? But something about Saturn and Aquarius and the new rules and the new realities we're in, I think could be highlighted here. Maybe we can use this to kind of lean into I'm trying to personally lean into the new. That's been my mantra. It's like, okay, this is our new reality. Like, I'm going to be online a lot. It sucks sometimes. Internet addiction sucks, but this is where I got to navigate, this kind of air reality. And so those are some of my quick thoughts. I kind of like it. I like Saturn, and I like a trine to Saturn as a supportive kind of part of the moment.
Yeah, especially with like Saturn being the exaltation lord of Libra. And having that nice little supportive, sextile trine to the moon. I really like that as well. And like you mentioned, we have an exalted Venus ruling the lunation. And while they don't make a Ptolemaic aspect, it is in Tisha, not by degree, but Pisces, Libra, and Tisha is a thing. So yeah, I think it is an exciting moon. I'm curious about the square to Pluto and what that might bring, but both luminaries would kind of run into that square shortly after the lunation.
Yeah, I just think about the fact that any given lunation is like an annual event where the moon is fullest in that particular house of your chart. So it's really kind of like a spotlight being shone in that. And so one of the ways I see this is, I hate to take this back to the French election, but I've just done so much research on it. The day of that full moon is happening in Emmanuel Macron's 10th house, and it'll be square the Pluto on his ascendant. So obviously for him, that's the day of him being sworn in for the next term. That's the day the next term of the French president begins. So I think it's very appropriate that he would have, a major full moon in his 10th house on the day that he would be sworn in again, and it makes that contact again to Pluto on his ascendant, in the same way that on the first day of voting, Mercury will be square Pluto on his ascendant from the other direction of the zodiac. So I think of how that full moon, if you think about the house, if you think about where Libra is in your natal chart, then that might give you an idea of like what topic will be kind of brought to bear, or brought to a sort of temporary level of prominence in that part of life. So
Yeah, I always like to say full moons reveal things. So it's like, what sort of revelations, it's like kind of like a spotlight or like a projector turning on into that area of life and, showing you something that you might not have been as aware of before. So yeah.
Culminations, bloomings,
right.
It's when it's full bloom.
Totally. Ooh, that'll be interesting. That'll be an interesting one. Sorry, I didn't know if you had something to add. The last thing I want to talk about, was there something? Sorry, I keep not.
Oh no,
go ahead, Kris. Take it away.
Mostly I would say the thing about with the full moon and the Libra, and to go off of what SJ was saying, was looking at Saturn being in trine to it and Venus being exalted in Jupiter. I was thinking about the U.S. Supreme Court and how our laws are going to be shaped and changed. So especially after the confirmation of our new Supreme Court justice in the U.S. and all there, I'm curious to see all the implications that will come forth from that and the changes that we're going to see. But beyond that, on personal levels, just in my 11th house, and I'm just looking forward to see the new kinds of friends I make from all of this.
Actually, that's reminding me of what I wanted to say. I wanted to say something about when Mercury comes to that square to Pluto. We were talking about, just, all these squares to Pluto really makes me think about and things coming to light, right? And I think that I have not been paying attention, but I think that there's been stuff happening around the January 6th committee stuff. And I'm wondering if more is going to come to light from those investigations. There's just a lot of stuff from, 2020, early 2021, a lot of president number 45 stuff that's still ongoing and still in the courts. And I'm wondering if some of these Pluto squares might bring some more to light there too. Yeah.
Can I say one thing, Kirah,
Sure,
just
yeah.
short, quick to add to this? I just want to point out that this is the last syzygy before the eclipse. And that first solar eclipse is also ruled by the same planet, Venus. And so it might be worth thinking about Venus in Pisces right now being extra highlighted by the next two, the full moon and then the new moon. And so that might be something to just get people to think about. Where's Pisces? What's going on there in your life in that Pisces house?
That's a really good point. Yeah. Ooh, I can't wait to talk about that eclipse. Not this episode, next episode.
Yeah.
I guess yeah. I guess just kind of talking a little bit about Taurus season over this next couple of minutes. The sun's going to enter Taurus late on the 19th / early on the 20th. That's also 420. What up? And blaze it. And we also get Mercury conjoining the North Node on the 23rd. And that actually, that's kind of mostly what I wanted to just quickly touch on is Mercury running into the North Node, because I don't know if we get it multiple times, but it does kind of hang out there when it retrogrades back. It's going to be within a couple of degrees. So yeah, any thoughts on Mercury hitting the North Node? Because yeah, I just feel like that's important to talk about. Mercury Rahu. And I guess I guess I'll just say my general point of view on planets hitting the North Node is that the North Node has this way of I like to say it's blasting the volume. It just makes that planet very loud and kind of overactivates it. The nodes are very distorting. They distort things, right? So with the North Node coming to Mercury Mercury coming to the North Node in Taurus, I'm expecting some big news or, something. Yeah, something. I'm curious to hear what you guys might think can come.
A catchy slogan. A catchy slogan. a new marketing campaign that comes out with a big bang and like, oh my God, I'm seeing these ads everywhere for X. You know, I mean, Taurus usually corresponds to like luxury brands or material things. It would have something to do with, I don't know, like a cupcake brand that comes out with a, you know, a big marketing push or something like that. I don't know. It's that I tend to think of, planets crossing the North Node similarly to you, that it's like a magnification kind of the significations of that planet, also knowing that Mercury has this connection to markets and that Mercury will be going retrograde, and you know, Uranus and Taurus has kind of corresponded with all of this you know, volatility in the markets, especially with digital currencies. I'd probably expect you know, to, well, I wish I could say which one and which way it goes and up or down, but I guess it would be enough to say that we might expect to see sort of either like a new coin announced or a some you know, dramatic reversal in, you know, a given coin's price. You know, could be a buying opportunity, could be a lot of people losing money. It really just depends. I'd also expect, just based on like Francis McWhirter's work on the nodes moving into the fixed signs, that this will probably represent could be a turning point in the housing market generally across the country, which is just way too hot.
Atrocious.
It's atrocious. I mean, great to sell like I just did, but obviously horrible to buy. So I'm currently feeling that right now too. So I'd expect maybe that to be somehow in focus as you see planets getting you know, crossing the North Node, or with eclipses happening on that axis. So yeah, that's probably all I have to say.
I was going to say, to piggyback off that, I see another explosion for NFTs with Taurus being a Venus rule sign, and combined with Uranus being, especially like the reversals, because right now a lot of the altcoins are just completely down. So possibly with Mercury hitting the North Node and Uranus being there, we could see a secondary explosion of these NFTs that are backed by altcoins. And another, well, I don't want to call it a bubble, because a lot of the time it's just like the old pump and dump kind of scam. But I definitely can see a lot of new people coming into wealth from this transit.
I hope it's me.
Cupcake NFT.
Yeah, I'll start a new coin. How about that? Cupcake coin.
Do it at the Mercury direct station, because that Mercury retrograde will take back what you stopped there.
Cool. I think we can wrap that up. I know Patrick has to go do a reading. I have to go praise Venus. So we're going to wrap this up. This was so much fun. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thanks for
having
me.
Thanks for having us.
Scorpio power.
Hey, Scorpio power. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let the people know how to find you. Patrick, why don't you go first?
You can find me at patrickwatsonAstrology.com for information about my services and my articles. And you can also follow me on Twitter at pwatsonastro.
Awesome. And Kris?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Prof Eclipse. I am also on Instagram, also under Professor Eclipse. And in a couple of weeks, my website will be rebuilt at professoreclipse.net.
Awesome.
Nice.
We'll link it all in the show notes too. And SJ?
I'm sjAnderson144.com. That's where you can find everything about me. And you also have links to my social media. Twitter is my big platform that you can find me there at sjAnderson144, and then YouTube at sjAnderson144. And that's where you can see me.
Awesome. Sweet. Thank you guys so much. This was so awesome. And thanks 11th Housers for joining us live.